So, are you still waiting to buy a house? I'm going to tell you why that's a bad idea, and we're starting right now. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Your Wichita Falls. I'm Debbie Dobbins, your host for this episode. And as you already know, I am a real estate agent and a mortgage lender and a whole lot of things in between. But one thing that I actually feel is one of my superpowers is that I'm an economic savant. And I say that because I've been predicting the economy for years. And that being said, there are times when outside influences cannot be predicted. Oh, let's see, recent history, COVID. And current history, the Ukraine. Whenever you have a world conflict or a major global pandemic, that's going to create some things that are not built into the prediction model, number one. But number two, there's also this supply chain issue. So I want to talk today to those of you that are sitting on the fence waiting for things to change and be different. And especially if you're thinking of moving to Texas. Because Texas, the history of Texas is that we used to be a country. We are so big, our economy is ranked in the top 10 percentile of all economies of the whole world. If you take it and drill it down. They categorize economies by countries. However, if you look at the GDP for Texas, we are in the top actually 5. So, that being said, why is that? Oh, well, because of this huge influx of people from everywhere, especially the left and the right coasts, and my hometown, my home state, California. So, I want to share with you some of the updates so that you can begin to see how really critical and severe it is at this particular moment for things that are shifting and changing. And if you are thinking or have been thinking or putting off buying real estate in the state of Texas particularly, because it's only going to get more challenging than you ever imagined. So let's start off with, I was watching 60 Minutes the other night, not because I watched 60 Minutes, it was interrupting my Hulu with an episode of The Equalizer. So I went, oh, okay, what is this happening? Leslie Stahl, not that I give any credence to Leslie Stahl, whatever, but she finally confirmed, or 60 Minutes confirmed, because she doesn't write her own script, what I've been saying for months, almost a year, that this inventory shortage that we're having is based on 2 major contributing factors, besides the pandemic, because everyone wants to blame it on that the builders stopped building in 2008, didn't start ramping up for a decade later, and number 2, the millennials decided to get into the market. And now in Texas, we have this other component of this influx of people with cash. So it makes it really challenging for just the average consumer, middle class America, to buy a house because most people are qualified for loans with 3 to 5% down, and they cannot compete in an arena where cash is king, or in the alternative where cash is being used to overbid with what's called an appraisal waiver, so they bring cash to the table. What's happening is not only is that causing it to be very difficult to buy a house if you're just an average person with an average loan, it makes it challenging as renters as well, which actually her story was about renters, about the astronomical increase in rent prices. And statistically, I've already shared a video about the rent prices, but they've gone up almost 40% in the last year for so many people across the country, especially in those areas like the Sun Belt, Texas, and even California. Why is that happening? Well, here's an interesting factoid that I haven't shared, and that is there are lots of publicly traded companies out there that are buying up properties. They love the Sun Belt, which is Florida and the southern states. They're buying up properties to be landlords. So they buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, they fix it up, put about $20,000 into it, and then rent it. But the rent prices are extremely high. These companies are making billions of dollars off of the backs of you, the middle class, millennials even, that want to buy a house, but they cannot buy a house because they can't compete in the market, which they're competing against these very companies that are buying these houses up for, by the way, and then re-renting them and making these rent prices very, very high. So not only are you being squeezed as a consumer, especially in the middle class, from the side of the values of the houses are way high, you're competing with cash buyers with these basic loans. You're competing now against these companies that their pure incentive is to buy these houses and to rent them out. And here is the really difficult challenge, is that they're buying them for cash as well. So if you're a seller, imagine, put yourself in the seat of a seller, you have offers that come in from a borrower or a buyer that's got a VA approval. They have no money down, which is what VA is so great about. They probably don't have any money for closing costs, so typically you would ask the seller to pay your closing costs and build that into the cost of your loan. And the sellers have another offer, and you're going to close in 30 days because that's what's the normal closing with the appraisal, etc. The seller has other offers. One of them being, let's say, a all-cash deal from somebody from California, or one of these large publicly traded billion-dollar companies that comes in and says, here's cash, there's no contingency, I don't need to do an inspection, I will buy the house sight unseen, you don't have to do anything, and you will have a check in less than 2 weeks, and you can move out. Now, put yourself in the position of a seller. You'd love to help this lovely person that's a veteran that served our country, or your own financial gain of put the money in my pocket and let me move on with my life. Now that's going on across the country, especially in these areas that I just shared about, and in all of these larger cities. So what does that mean to you as the consumer? Well, number one, it's very difficult to compete, but then let's add another layer. Another layer on top of that is that we have this amazing, and I say that in a little tongue-in-cheek, Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, who constantly goes out there in the market and squawks about how they're going to raise interest rates. Because by golly, by gosh, and if you listen to this gentleman, really the undertone of it is very parental, if you will. You all, meaning you all in the country, all of you middle-class people, are going to get yourself together because meaning the Fed, is going to raise these interest rates how many times is that? 6 times this year, probably 7. They've already started. The only reason they didn't raise it 0.5% this last round, last week, was because of the Ukraine war, right? When there's an international conflict, it does give people pause. But here's the difficulty, is that those interest rates, and thankfully the interest rates are right about where they were pre-pandemic, which is good. And frankly, anything below 6 is still a good interest rate. But guess what? People generally have a limited memory bank, so they only remember when the rates were in the 2s, less than 6 to 8 months ago. And oh my gosh, then the 3s. Well, guess what? They're in the 4s now. They're in the high 4s, and they're hovering at 5. The interest rates are going to be, I promise you, 6% within 6 months. Did you hear that? The rates are going to be at 6% within 6 months. Now, what does that mean to you for a payment if you're thinking about finding a home? $100, $200, $300 more depending on what your loan amount is. If you get up into the $400,000 ranges, you're probably looking at a payment of about $500 more a month. Now, that's great. You can still be competitive with your mortgage payment against a rent payment, because that same house you'll probably be paying $1,200 to $1,800 a month depending on your loan amount, whereas the rent's going to be $1,900, $2,000, $2,500 a month. So it still benefits you to buy a house. But the sad thing is that if you are going to rent, you still have the instability of that landlord. You still have the inability to do what you want to do with that house. You also have the fear of them saying, oh my gosh, it's time for me to sell, meaning me, the owner. And then you're left with either a new owner who wants to raise your rent, and you better hope you have a good lease, because the fact is that things are not changing. Then this supply chain issue. That is one of the most challenging, because remember I talked about the inventory shortage. The inventory shortage is because the builders didn't start to build until about a decade after 2008. So they can't catch up. Well, it would be hard enough if they could catch up in a normal market. Enter supply chain issues. They can't get the supplies that it takes to build a house. It was funny, I was having a conversation with my mom the other day. She goes, how much is lumber? I said, Mom, it's not the lumber that we're worried about, because there is lumber that you need to build a house. But it's all the other things that go into building that house. You've got the brick, you've got the stone, you've got the plumbing, you've got the concrete, you've got the nails, you've got all the components that you don't even think about, that you use on an everyday basis in your house, that they're having trouble getting. So they cannot build these houses fast enough to make up for this shortage, for this huge demand. Then enter the fact that people are now, as sellers, reconsidering whether or not they want to sell, because they have no place to go, because they're going to be in the same boat that everybody else is that's looking for a house. So the upshot of all of this is, it's not gloom and doom, it's a sense of urgency. It's time to make a decision. If you want to buy a house, now is the time. You're going to be a prime time buyer, and in Texas particularly, because the rest of the country is a model of what's going on, but I can assure you that Texas is so specific to what's happening here, given the fact that we have this huge influx of people ever since pre-pandemic. The people were already coming to Texas in droves. Now, let's go to Wichita Falls. Let's make this more local. We here in Wichita Falls, we still have a limited amount of inventory, and there are some multiple offers on some properties. However, we have the lowest cost of living in America. There's another report out, and I'll share that on another video, that just came out. We're the #2 city in America for the lowest cost of living. #2! I can't remember which the first one was, but it was a place I probably wouldn't live. So, therefore, if you have the ability to come here, buy a house, live in the lifestyle that you want, have a beautiful home, pay less than you would anywhere else in the world, why wouldn't you? And we don't have the crazy market swings that all of these other communities have. So, I had a little coffee this morning, so I'm like all jacked up. I am telling you, it is time, if you are thinking about buying a house, to do it now. I don't care where you live. I don't know how long it's going to take you to get here, but if you don't start now, you're going to find yourself on the wrong end of this spectrum, and I really, really, really would like to help you get here as quick as possible, because it is, what do I say, the happiest place in Texas, possibly the world. So, there's 2 more videos coming up. Stay tuned. If you have any questions whatsoever about what I shared in this video, or buying a house here, or looking to relocate to Wichita Falls, please find the Zoom link. Please find the link to schedule a Zoom call in the first comments below, and I will be thrilled to share with you anything and everything that you might want to know. So, as I always say, y'all come back now. You hear? Bye-bye.